So in this video, you will learn about test cross. Alright, so for example, let tall be the dominant trait. So the genotype could be heterozygous or homozygous dominant. So based on the phenotype, right, you can't tell what is the genotype. But you can actually perform a test cross, right? You can perform a test cross to actually determine the genotype of an organism with a dominant trait by crossing the organism with a known homozygous recessive organism. Alright, so for example, we have the first scenario. Okay, so we start with this genetic diagram. The parent's phenotype, okay, tall with dwarf. So this one is the homozygous recessive organism, and you are keen to find out what is the genotype for this tall organism, right? Okay, so you start with the genotype. Okay, for example, we assume that, okay, maybe this is the genotype, homozygous dominant. You cross it with homozygous recessive, okay? Then you realize that all your F1 generation, okay, they all shows the dominant trait. Okay, they all shows the dominant trait. Okay, and therefore you can infer, okay, that the genotype for this tall organism is actually homozygous dominant. Okay, so you take a look at the trait, the physical trait of the offspring. Okay, in this case, all the offspring shows the dominant trait. Therefore, the genotype has to be homozygous dominant. Okay, on the other hand, okay, let's say for example, if the genotype is actually heterozygous, right? You realize that, okay, when you perform the test cross with the homozygous recessive, you realize that your F1 generation shows this phenotypic ratio of 1:1. Okay, which means to say, based on the phenotype of your offspring, you can actually deduce the genotype of this parent, which is heterozygous. Okay, so just a quick summary. If you want to find out what is the genotype for a dominant trait, because it could be either this or this, you can actually perform a test cross. You cross it with a homozygous recessive organism. Okay, so if all your offsprings, okay, shows the dominant trait, that means this genotype has to be homozygous dominant. If you get a ratio of 1:1, okay, that means to say the genotype, right, for this organism is heterozygous.